Welcome to In Such a Time, conversations on Jewish life, leadership, and meaning. Each week, Rabbis Jonathan Jaffe and Leora Londy explore the moments, questions, and ideas that shape who we are and who we aspire to be. And now, for this week's conversation.
Welcome back to In Such a Time, conversations on Jewish life, leadership, and meaning. I'm your co-host, Rabbi Jaffe, along with Rabbi Londy, and today we're going to be talking about Thanksgiving and more broadly about observance of non-Jewish holidays and to what degree have our own families, our own experiences, have we participated in these other holidays? What advice do we give to others? And where in certain moments does this come up as a conflict with our own practice as Jews? So I always like to start with you and say, tell me a little bit about, we had such different backgrounds growing up, and so I love the comparison. What was it like growing up for you, and what Jewish holidays, non-Jewish holidays did you participate in? Especially tell us about your Thanksgiving.
So really, really nice to be with you. And it's nice to be able to share, these anecdotes about our upbringing. It's nice to learn things about how other people live their Jewish lives and navigated, assimilation in America in many ways. So I lived in Orlando, Florida, without a lot of family. And so we actually had different Thanksgiving observances. One of the things that I remember that was really grounding for me, and I've come back to this, like emotionally and spiritually, is we always volunteered as a community in homeless shelters before Thanksgiving or on Thanksgiving. And or on Christmas as well. And so I really remember being there and just really, maybe for the first time, understanding what it meant to be thankful, realizing like I have a bed and I have food and I might whine a lot, but all my needs are being met. So that was like the greater understanding of what it means to be thankful in relationship to Thanksgiving. And we never had really big Thanksgivings. We'd go to family friends, and it was a lot of Friendsgivings. But Thanksgiving was kind of like superfluous in many ways because we always had Shabbat dinner every week. We had the opportunity to sit down and to check in as a family and with friends every week. And so it wasn't such a big holiday. We tried having it in a bigger capacity a few times, which was nice, but it wasn't like the thing that we come flocking to every year. We didn't celebrate any non-Jewish holidays, perhaps except for Thanksgiving. We certainly didn't celebrate Christmas. I didn't grow up observing or celebrating Halloween, to my chagrin. And it was very thoughtful that we are Jewish and we observe Jewish holidays. That's not to say that we weren't in conversation with non-Jewish neighbors. We'd have non-Jewish neighbors that would invite us for Christmas and we'd get to see their tree, but we'd, do the great migration to Chinese restaurants and movies on Christmas, like a lot of American Jews do. And so it was very purposeful that we did not observe any non-Jewish holidays. And I was very much kept in that bubble. But because of the interfaith work that my parents did, I was very much exposed to other holidays as well. Yeah, how about you? What was your experience?
So with Thanksgiving, we had a big Thanksgiving, and for me, I felt always though I appreciated Thanksgiving because it was one of the few times of year in which my classmates and I were all looking forward to the same holiday. That I lived in such dissonance when it came to Jewish holidays versus Christian holidays, and Thanksgiving was like a thing we could all gather together over. Remember that my mom would make macadamia nut stuffing for it with like sort of the Hawaiian touch, and having a lot of people over at the house and for all of that. Although I have to say to you, and we discussed this a little bit, I have to admit, and I'm going to be the downer again here, that I don't love Thanksgiving the way that others do, and that has nothing to do with my Judaism. It has to do with the fact that Thanksgiving to me I largely associate with very sedentary, sitting at home, eating way too much food, and just feeling like restless and bored. I don't like to watch three football games in a row. I didn't have the quintessential Northeast Thanksgiving where you're, playing tackle football with like the leaves all around out in the fall. So for me, Thanksgiving, I always try to fill it up with other activities. I love the idea that your family spent Thanksgiving volunteering. I love it that we are volunteering, and by the time this podcast comes out, we will have just done this
Yeah.
huge volunteer effort at the synagogue. I think that's such an integral part of it. But for me, my sort of borderline ADHD-ness always made Thanksgiving, and especially in my adult life, even more so, a harder thing to deal with because there's little of the other than the eating, and I always feel like I eat too much that I look forward to. I should say, other than seeing family, I'm now a dad of a college kid, and my college kid comes home, and I can't wait. And it's all about that. But you watch football, you eat, you, for some, wake up at 2 in the morning and go wait in line for a flat screen TV while people try to beat you up. Like that is no interest to me. And so overall, I've never sat around and watched like the Macy's Thanksgiving parade. It just feels very homey, like very like almost like jailed at home for these days. Yes, I can't do it.
You know, the first time that I really celebrate Thanksgiving with any meaning,
Mhm.
just very bizarre, was in Israel.
Okay.
Because when you're in Ola, when you're an immigrant, which is the name Hebrew word for an immigrant, like you've come up to Israel, sometimes you want to express and lean into your Americanism.
Mhm.
That's also a way of feeling connected to home and feeling connected to other immigrants. And so the gap year program that I did called Nativ, they'd have this epic Thanksgiving meal where they'd invite any American who was in Israel, or any one of the alum of the program. And so it would be like the great coming home to this program and seeing friends that you haven't seen for years. And that was extremely meaningful for me. Then the program lost funding, so they couldn't have a big Thanksgiving anymore. And so my friends and I would have a Friday night Thanksgiving, which was really, really meaningful. That was the first time that we made it into something. But it was kind of trying to be nostalgic for something that wasn't a part of my upbringing in a serious way.
Right.
Yeah. So I think sometimes I wanted to have a more serious Thanksgiving, but it just wasn't, I forget, like my family were also immigrants a few generations ago. It didn't really make it into the canon of our family. Yeah, exactly. Of what's important in our family culture.
And I'll go further down my downer wormhole is that I
You're
don't
not a
like
downer.
I don't like Thanksgiving food. I have this theory that no one likes Thanksgiving food because if so, then Boston Market would be like Starbucks in every corner, and it doesn't. No one says, "Hey, let's go out for turkey stuffing and cranberry sauce tonight." I think the fact that on the East Coast people eat mashed yams with marshmallows on top is vile. I don't understand that one at all. And the green bean casserole and all of that, it's so heavy and like so 1950s. It's like one big Stouffer's like TV dinner, like a Salisbury steak. It's all of these foods that I would have no interest eating any time of the year. And in fact, we've done recent Thanksgivings without even a turkey present, and now I've lost the respect of all of our congregants.
No, I was in a vegetarian household, and so my parents would go. This is so embarrassing. I can't believe I'm sharing it. They'd go and buy a tofurkey.
Of course, yes.
That would be like the great thing, and then we'd all eat it and pretend that it tasted good.
Yes.
And then we decided we're not eating it for another whole year. But I still love the taste of tofurkey. No, it is truly vile, but especially served next to mashed sweet potatoes with marshmallows on top.
So let's compare. I think that there's a different discussion to be had around observing holidays that are, or we say, parv religiously, that don't have any counter religious meaning to them. And I would put here like Thanksgiving, like the 4th of July, Arbor Day, and then, although we have our own Arbor Day in Judaism, and then those that have counter-religious meaning. And here I'd even separate between something like Christmas and Easter because they are so widely celebrated religiously, and something like Halloween, which has religious roots, but is observed overwhelmingly in a secular fashion. You might say the same for Christmas almost these days, but that I don't know many Wiccans around who are celebrating Hanukkah, celebrating Halloween, definitely not celebrating Hanukkah. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on, especially you are a mother of 3 children. You are trying to toe the line here. Your kids go to Jewish day school. Well, let's use as 3 examples here. How do you handle Thanksgiving versus Halloween versus Christmas?
Okay, that's actually it's something that I'm dealing with very actively right now. Thanksgiving, We celebrate to some extent. We're leaning into a real Thanksgiving kind of this year and going to family friends who are doing that. Um, we are going the day before, which has become our tradition, to Great Wolf Lodge. So that is now a sacred.
Is there a discount, I hope?
You
No,
know,
the Christmas Day
you know, there's
discount.
a discount. No, I'm going on Thanksgiving, the day before
Oh,
Thanksgiving.
same thing,
But
yeah.
except you know there's a discount.
Okay.
Don't even ask me
That's all.
that. And so we do Thanksgiving because that feels fine and it's a nice opportunity just to get together with family and with friends. Halloween, I struggle with. Halloween is also celebrating like the Day of the Dead is so antithetical to what Judaism is about in every way. It was also a day that became historically anti-Semitic and um, not a safe day for Jews. This year, we had a discussion with my kids. I said, I'm not sure I feel comfortable with Halloween, and there was real discussion and discourse in my family about it. One child said, I'm just doing it for the candy. It's like the four children of Pesach. Just doing it for the candy, and we're gonna get dressed up, and it's gonna be great. And another child said, "But we're Jewish, Ema. We can't do it." And then the other child was like, "We're gonna do whatever the dominant sibling decides that's what we're gonna do." And so, we actually made a decision this year that we were gonna do Shabbat dinner as a neighborhood. Before Shabbat started because it fell on a Friday night. We'd start trick or treating before Shabbat started, and we'd come back and still be able to observe Shabbat. And so it really felt like we were towing the line. I live in a very Jewish neighborhood where there was a lot of parents were uncomfortable about it. The really religious kids who were celebrating Halloween went out and made sure to come back before Shabbat was over. Some kids who didn't observe at all would open the door to trick or treaters saying Shabbat Shalom. My kids kind of were part of all of the chaos of it. And so I'm not going to say that I feel good about that decision. It feels a little bit painful. I didn't want to give into that, but sometimes you give into certain things and make it a teachable moment, which I think we did. Christmas is explicitly Christian in my mind, and that's something that we're not going to touch. That's a very clear red line in my observance. And not until I arrived here did I even understand how that could not be a red line for other Jews. But people have explained to me, no, like we're Jewish and we celebrate Christmas. Christianity, Christmas is about the birth of Jesus Christ.
I've heard.
You've heard, and so I don't understand how people do their calculations and come at the other side saying that I can be Jewish and celebrate Christmas. But I also know that people can understand it culturally and take the religion out of it. And I'm trying to be careful with what I'm saying because I want to respect people who make the choice to do what they do. On the other hand, I do think that those two things really don't interact. Being Jewish and celebrating Christmas are not two complementary items that necessarily go together in a menu.
Yeah, I agree. I think that for a lot of Americans, and this is for Jews and non-Jews alike, that Christmas has almost turned into Thanksgiving in terms of not going to church, not praying, not having any sort of a spiritual practice, but is more of an Americanized holiday, which is around food and gathering, often around shopping, often around TV. It's almost like a Thanksgiving 2.0 with a couple of different holidays. And when I see the bumper stickers of "Keep Christ in Christmas," I kind of agree with them. I'm like, yeah, Jewishly, I feel the exact same way, and I know where you're coming from, and so I can understand how it's less of a threat. Especially when I was living in San Francisco, we had tons of congregants in a dual Jewish family that would have a Christmas tree because they thought it was beautiful. My family, it's interesting. We've toed the line in that our observance is 100% Jewish. We do no Christmas observance at home, but we very much enjoy the Christmas observance elsewhere. That is, going to drive and to see holiday lights elsewhere is really nice. To going into New York City and see all the windows decorated, it's really nice. I have a childhood memory that we used to, growing up, there was a Pizza Hut near my house that we would eat at. And the Pizza Hut, as being part of a national chain, they would put frost on all of their windows. And it's December, it's 80 degrees outside. And I thought that was the funniest thing in the entire world, that we go eat and there'd be like the fake frost spray painted on the windows for it. Just, I could tell you many more stories about both all of these holidays that way, and how different our upbringing was. And so that for me has helped to frame my understanding of Christmas. I guess I'm a little bit more forgiving of Jews who celebrate Christmas as though they're celebrating Thanksgiving, and for them, the Christianness of the Christianness of Christmas is the same as the wickedness of Halloween. That is, that they completely bifurcate between the two and see it as a cultural expression of Americanism, much more like eating apple pie on the 4th of July. I personally, it's not my thing, but I can understand that a bit more.
I know what you're saying. And I didn't deal with this really for a long time in Israel because Christmas is not a day off.
No, it's just a day.
And I I was actually really interested in Christmas when I lived in Israel, and not for my own celebration, but I was at the core of it, and so I wanted to see it observed in Jerusalem. So a few times I did go to midnight mass, and it was really beautiful. But a holiday that is so explicitly about the birth of Jesus Christ, it makes me uncomfortable to take the religious element out of it for my Christian friends. And I I don't like the expression "stay in your lane," but it's so not Jewish in my opinion. I mean, I grew up in Orlando, as I said, and we had similar frost and on the
Mhm.
Pizza Hut. I actually remember that, and I'd see the Nutcracker, and I tap
See, we
in.
do have something in common
Yes,
this
we
way.
do. I tap Orlando, Florida Judaism. I'm sure
Yeah.
it's more similar to Hawaiian Judaism
Yeah.
than we might think. And I'd certainly tap into the beauty of having appreciation for it. But I never wanted to cross into the line of celebrating it because, first of all, what does it say about me as a Jew? I'm not celebrating the birth of Christ as my Lord and Savior.
Mhm.
And number one, I didn't feel respectful to the Christians among us, but I also think I'm very in tune with religious life of my own and of others.
Yeah.
Having said that, listen, I understand that Christmas is a time that's very meaningful for people who have those kinds of memories and who have a connection to it, especially for people who come from interfaith households. I understand that no one wants to give up a core happy memory.
Mhm.
And I have suggested in the past that they should. I'm not suggesting that anymore because I think it's much more complicated than that. What I do want to say though is that it's really hard for me um, as a Jew when I hear people celebrating both Hanukkah and Christmas because those two holidays contradict one another.
Yes.
Hanukkah is about the Hashmonaim, but the Maccabees, who tried to overcome Hellenism and the outside influence and to say assimilation is not working and it's going to ruin us. And if we don't save ourselves, if we don't lean into being Jewish, um, then we are no more. That is what Hanukkah is about. I mean, the light was an added element later on in rabbinic literature, but that's essentially we're celebrating Jewish particularism.
Yes.
And so, how can you celebrate Jewish particularism and have Christmas in your home? And I know that not everyone is there and having that same internal dialogue, but I think it is important that when we observe somebody else's culture, we understand how it communicates with our own tradition.
I'll go further than you on that. For me, the what really irritates me the most are those attempts to bleed between the two and to fuse Christmas and Hanukkah together. I'll give examples here. Putting a Jewish star on top of the Christmas tree, or you want to call it the Hanukkah bush. Having Jewish ornaments on your Christmas tree. Having with your elf on the shelf, your mensch on the bench, like the Jewish versions of that. Or you'll hear people say often in very universalistic settings, oh, this is a time of year, it's a celebration of light. And just like how Christmas is about light coming into the world and Hanukkah is light coming into the world. And, Kwanzaa is about light coming into the world, that we're all one and it's all the same thing. And for me, I have that Hashmonim sort of response of Hanukkah, of like, no, you're trying to use a broad stroke to erase my particularism and to say that we're not different and we are different. And I want to keep those boundaries. Those boundaries are meaningful and centering to me. And it's a very Christian impulse to universalize and to say that, oh, we're just all really all the same, all is one, sort of the John Lennon imagining of the world of we should just be all one big gloop of the same thing. And that rubs me very raw.
You know, I'm smiling because I'm thinking about rabbinic literature, which doesn't always make me smile, but right now it's making me smile because the idea of Hanukkah becoming a holiday, a light holiday, was really brought into rabbinic literature because the rabbis were dealing with assimilation of that time where there was the influence of outside cultures.
Not just Christianity, it was the sun
there-
god. It
yeah,
was the
there's
sun.
Judaism.
It was the sun god's birthday that they basically the Christians moved it to December.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that there was all that same sort of forces.
So they're already dealing with that. And in
Yeah.
order to give it a Jewish prism, they say, okay, now the story of Hanukkah, it's not about how the Maccabees, they didn't like the Maccabees,
Yeah.
how the Maccabees overcame Hellenism and created a man-made miracle. It's about God's miracle providing light where there didn't need to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a reclaiming of the story, but it's because there was outside influence of already having light holidays that they needed to tie it together.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wonder, what do we do? What do we do? What is our charge to our community in navigating holding these two ideas together?
I think the best test case for that, excuse me, is Halloween. And the reason Halloween, I would say, is because unlike Thanksgiving and unlike Christmas, Halloween happens while school is in session. And both secular schools and synagogues and day schools have to reckon with the Halloween conundrum of how much do we allow Halloween to occur within our school, within our community. And I think in recent years, you've seen there is an attempt just to pass it all over by making that a teacher parent conference day, right? This is like the thing to do now. Close religious school, make it some sort of a day, not to compete against it. I've been part of religious schools that have tried to be open on Halloween and have no Halloween influence. It's Halloween at religious school, but you can it's a pajama day for everyone, or you can dress up as your favorite biblical hero, and someone would come like in their like Freddy Krueger mask or whatever anyway, instead of it. That's my other problem with Halloween. Halloween, I don't know about you, but it got scarier. Like 20 years ago, it was not nearly as like violent and gory, and now like there's like mummies all over town, and there were like Frankenstein. It really, I feel it's gotten much scarier in the costumes as well. That's my own thing. So I think Halloween is such an interesting test case. Now, growing up again in Hawaii, I fully did all of Halloween. And Halloween, my memories are less about the childhood trick-or-treating and more about the teenhood shenanigans of in the neighborhood. There was a huge egg fight, like raw, like it was like a rock fight of like just hurl, like people being on other sides of a field and just trying to absolutely maim people with raw eggs and like their cars as they drove by. Then you'd go to the big fountain around Waikiki and people would try to dump soap in it so it would overflow. And then I really just, it was sort of hooliganism is what I remember about Halloween. Now my daughter's in college and now Halloween is a 3 or 4 day affair with 3 or 4 different costumes for each night and different nights of being out. And it's kind of like their own version of Mardi Gras now at college. For several days, there's costumes and drinking and all of that. And so for me, again, I have not, because I don't worry that my children are going to be lured towards becoming Wiccans by being in this, or that they're going to start worshiping the dead. And also in our home, like just like you, there is such constant centering and reinforcement around Jewish identity that I don't see that as being vulnerable. And for me, I don't feel the same sense of fear when it comes to something like Christmas.
Yeah, I mean, but nothing starts off as anything, but it's a slippery slope. And so
I think my kids are going to become Wiccan because Molly dressed up as, her favorite superhero or something.
I wouldn't. No, I know your children, and I really believe that their Jewish identity
Thank you.
is so deeply inside of them. But I'm talking about my in my decision making when I give slack in one place, then it gives me legitimacy to give slack in other places.
I mean,
And so
your kids are pretty Jewish too.
my kids are pretty Jewish. They're going to be pretty Jewish. But, I don't know if it was a source of pride for me or not. I've thought about this a lot. Not celebrating Halloween was so much about reaffirming myself as a Jew and growing up. And I actually hated it. I hated that we went to the movies on Halloween. I hated that my parents bought me a bag of candy. I was like, let me dress up. I remember one kid dressed up as a refrigerator, and I was just I thought that was so cool. And I I was frustrated that I was never around for that scene, but it was instilled in me like, it's not always easy being Jewish, and you have to create boundaries around your identity in order to hold on to it. And so I assume that next year we're going to celebrate Halloween again, and I assume I'm going to feel a little bit icky about it. And it's a conversation that I had with my neighbors about it, and I really did think that the solution that our children, my kids and the neighbors' kids, came to, because I like that they were in discussion about it, is we're going to have Shabbat dinner first. We're going to lean into being
Love that.
Jewish, and then we're going to do something kind of crazy and on the edge of not really so conformist with the Jewish tradition. And I think that that's the essence of living in the diaspora, that yeah, you have to make choices, and if the choice leads to the decision leads to an outcome that you don't necessarily want, you need to tweak that. And so we tried something, and I agree, there's certain boundaries that are clear to me. We're not celebrating Christmas, but are we going to go into the city and see the lights? Are we going to um have some kind of connection with the holiday of it being beautiful? Maybe, probably.
I have a feeling that some of my ease with this comes with the fact, and I'll tell you about these things, and you're going to think it's a wonder that I ever turned out Jewish. The degree to which my sister and I were exposed to Christian practice, and yet ended up, because of having a strong Jewish background, not sort of leaning towards that way. So growing up in Hawaii, the only like all my friends were not Jewish. My parents were afraid that we would be the ones at school to tell the other preschool kids that there was no Santa Claus. I had a Christmas tree. I had Santa. I put out milk and cookies for Santa. I mean, that whole thing, I did all of that until I was around 5 or 6 or so. And then it's funny, I think my mom, in wanting to make the usual American Jewish impulse to make Hanukkah so exciting that that we're not going to feel bad about missing Christmas, she would put up the most garish display of lights and banners and everything. We had a flashing Jewish star, that one triangle on, and the other triangle on. Our entire living room vomited Hanukkah. Like it was just so much. So like it was. We didn't need to go outside to see the lights. We had so much of that Hanukkah inside. Yes, exactly, to sort of make up for it. You'll appreciate this. In our elementary school, of course, we went to Christian schools growing up, and there was a Christmas pageant. My sister played Mary in the Christmas pageant, and it was an African American Cabbage Patch Kid was Jesus. But now the Jewish Mary is actually very accurate in that way.
She was typecast.
Right. Later in the same play, they did Peter Rabbit, and I was cast as the bush that he gets held into, which showed you my acting skills back then. Um, in high school, I mean, I was at Christmas parties all of the time. One of my best friends in high school was a child of, grandchild of Protestant missionaries, 2 Christmas trees, huge party, eggnog, the train set going around and such.
That's exciting.
I would wear a Santa hat and go over there and like have fun that way. And the Christmas thing, I never really doubted my own Judaism, but it was for me a way of dabbling in. And then just like you going to the Grateful Lodge on Thanksgiving, I mean, you grew up in Hawaii, and in high school, you have the beach to yourself on Christmas morning. No one's there. Surf day every single time. Just get out there while you can. Why not go surfing with a Santa hat on? Why? And that was sort of like a thing to do. And so there was sort of I experienced an ease. Like I was able to, you want to call it code switch, you want to call it like be a chameleon. I was able to kind of go back and forth in a very easy way without feeling like I was losing my rootedness in who I was.
So I think that, we're coming at it from two places. I mean,
So different.
I don't think I'm coming at it from fear,
Mhm.
but I do think that sometimes I create walls around my practice in order to I think I'm someone who would be very seduced by assimilation and like Hellenization. And I think that I put the boundaries on that for myself.
Exactly.
Whereas I think you might be someone who's just you're very secure.
I've been over the edge. I've looked over. I've done all of it. Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it's two different ways of approaching. It's, do you do things out of, are you a boundaried person who is okay dabbling because you're going to come back? Or are you a less boundaried person that needs the boundaries in order to hold on to something that you believe to be sacred?
I mean, I'm going to sound a little bit more like you, and then on the other end, this year at Halloween, so we're empty nesters now for the semester while Sammy's in Israel, so there's no Halloween going on there in Israel, of course. Yeah, and I took this vacation.
There's trunk or treat. It's made it there.
It has.
It has.
I had never heard of trunk or treat until I came to New York. That in California, there was no such thing. In Hawaii, for sure. So we were in Moab, Utah, hiking for Halloween. I had no idea it was even Halloween. This year, I'll be in Israel for Christmas, and I'll probably see people there. All the missionaries will be there for Christmas in Jerusalem. But you know what it's like. It's just a day, just a regular day. And for me, there's not a sense of loss. There's a sense of relief, and like I don't have to deal with it. I enjoy being in Israel for Christmas when there's no observance happening anywhere around me. I enjoy being in Moab, Utah, and not having to deal with the Halloween issue. So, in a sense, I guess I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth, in that I have learned to adapt, and especially like when you're a kid growing up in Hawaii and everyone's Christian around you, it's not as though you can sort of opt out. Like it's there, and you have to decide whether to go with the flow or whether to completely wall yourself out. Here now, and especially because of my schedule and because of where I am at this time of life, it's not as big a factor, and I don't have to think about it as much, and that's really nice. And I know when Molly was going out to my daughter was going out to different parties at the college campus, it didn't make me think that it was going to make her any less Jewish. Like she was just going to have a good time.
So in the place that I'm always thinking about is what's the one step too far going to be that I'm going to let go of things, that I'm
right. You have to have a boundary somewhere.
Yeah. When I lived in Israel, there in my neighborhood, I lived in a predominantly Russian speaking neighborhood for some of the time that I lived there. And one year, the first year we moved there, I see trees going up.
Tons. Yeah.
And I was like, what is happening? I didn't move to Israel for Christmas.
Right.
And I talked to one of my neighbors and I said, I'm so sorry. Why are you celebrating Christmas? You're in Israel. And they go, it's not Christmas. And I said, what is it? And they said, it's Novi God. And I said, it looks like Christmas to me. And it seems like Christmas to me. And you're wearing a Santa hat and you have a little tree. What is going on? And they said, in the former Soviet Union, on New Year's, which is Novi God, it was the one day a year that they were allowed to celebrate any semblance of the holiday. And so everyone goes all out and celebrates the new year with all of the symbolism kind of borrowed from other cultures.
You felt terrible, didn't you?
They invited me to their party.
How's Novi good?
It was,
it was good.
Lots of vodka and caviar and delicious and wonderful and very bizarre. And I said to my friends, you're here now. Why do you need that? And they said, it reminds us that we didn't have anything and we still hold on to something that's good. We hold on to something really sweet from that pretty bitter time. Yeah. And so that kind of opened my eyes to why certain traditions, whether it's in conflict with parts of our core identity, really hard to give up. And it made me more open to people having different observances, even if it's outside of the Jewish context. It made me very curious about what are the different practices that people have and what ties them to their roots. It kind of reminds me, and people, when we change a tune here at the synagogue, people go, well, that's not what I grew up with.
It's not traditional.
It's not traditional. Traditional meaning it's not what I grew up with. And it's beautiful that our childhood memories are so sacred. And so I have my own personal boundaries. I'm talking as Leora, but as rabbi in this community. I really think about, when people come to me, Rabbi, is it okay that I celebrate Christmas? I'm never going to say, oh, it's wonderful that you celebrate Christmas. But I will say, I'll ask why is that important for you? What does that mean for you? What's the significance of that holiday in your heart? And how are you holding that along with your Jewish identity?
Absolutely. And I think for me, when it comes to the boundaries, I'm thinking about it, and I wouldn't think of it more about a specific thing I'm going to do, but more monitoring where my children and my family are at.
Yeah.
My kids have never asked me, have never expressed any desire or interest in having a Christmas tree, a mensch on the bench, any sort of Christmas observance, any sort of Santa. I think that they receive, and I want to credit my wife here a lot for this, they've received such a rich and vibrant cultural expression of everything Jewish at home and the Jewish foods of the season. When December comes up, it's not, what's for Christmas. It's when are we going to make our own homemade fried sufganiyot at home, because that's our favorite activity of December. Or like we do at the synagogue, when are we going to do our sufganiya crawl down the Upper East Side, which podcast listeners we will be doing. We'll get you that information as well. That I think it's about, if you fill up the void with so much love and with so much content and pride, it sounds like what you do with your Shabbat observance, like that, and all of your holidays, then I feel as though there isn't the same lack, that then there's the feeling of need to fill it with something from the outside world.
First of all, it's so beautiful. I've been to your home on Hanukkah. Like, you can feel it. It's like a visceral experience walking into your home. It's like smelling it, and feeling it, and it's really, really beautiful and rooting, and it's
without the big flashing Star of David thing on the mantle.
You feel it inside, and you don't have a seizure because of it. And I remember when, right even before we moved to America, we had told our kids we're moving to America, and my kids were exposed to too much Peppa Pig at the time. Still exposed to too much Peppa Pig, but even more then. And there was Christmas episodes, and my son said, with his very heavy Israeli accent at the time, is this the year that we get a Christmas tree now that we're moving to America? And I said, we are not even in America yet. Like, that's not happening.
Good.
But we can certainly go see one, just as we went in Yafo to see the Christmas tree every year. So yeah, you're always, at this moment, in such a time of being Jewish, it's important to remember to live in the world, but also do the things that keep you connected and grounded in your identity. But we've talked about it. We're leaning into the particularism lately, but it's also really beautiful to bow and acknowledge the universalism and the beauty in that too.
Yeah, I think it's a lovely thing to end on. I'll just share with one last anecdote if I can, which is for the advice for any of you on the podcast. The very overbearing, over-the-top thing I say as advice, if someone was going to say, why can't I have a Christmas tree? I'd say, you have two options. Jews, we every year at Tu B'Shvat, we plant trees and we put them outside and let them grow. Why would you want to cut down a tree and have it die and decay in your living room in the name of God? I'd much rather plant a tree in God's honor. Now, there's a lot of Jewish guilt just waded right into that explanation, but it's worked for me so far.
I'm gonna sit with that one.
Thanks, everyone. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on In Such a Time. Make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. To learn more about Rabbis Jonathan Jaffe and Leora Londy, or to connect with Temple Bethel of Northern Westchester, visit bethelnw.org. Or follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Temple Bethel NW. Thanks for listening.